introduce an educative program. It will be shared by Michal Ramot, who is the director of the online teaching at Hebrew U, Michal, and Beigel, also from the Hebrew U, who is in charge of running the multimedia unit for education at the medical school at the Hebrew University, and Shmuel.
People that we would like to very much to incorporate into our commission one way or another. So, of course, done, and we just, I think, struck some sort of a commitment to consult with you as much as possible, and David also, and just wanted you to know that Javi, Nicole, thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for helping us.
So, hi everyone. I want to talk about our new course at the Hebrew University, Medicine During the Holocaust. So I'll start with the course program, okay, and then we'll talk about it.
הרפואה בשואה ואחריה אינה היסטוריה בת יותר מ-80 שנה, אלא נושא רלוונטי לימינו ולעתיד. ההתפתחות המוסרית של כל איש מקצוע, קל וחומר של רופאה או אח, חייבת להיות מבוססת על הכרת התרחיש הגרוע ביותר שידעו מקצועות הבריאות מעולם. מעורבות רופאים ורפואה ברצח עם. השואה.
במשפט הרופאים נשפטו 20 רופאים ו3 פקידים בכירים בממצא לרפואה הגרמנית על פשעים נגד האנושות. הם הצדיקו את זה שבזמן מלחמה הכל מותר. הם לא היו אנשים משולי החברה, הם לא היו פסיכופטים או חולי נפש, הם ידעו מה שהם עשו.
השאלה הגדולה והמטרידה, כיצד מרפא הופך לרוצח? כיצד הפכה הרפואה ממקצוע מרפא למקצוע רצחני?
Auschwitz became an ideal laboratory which rendered these actions possible in unprecedented fashion, because here was raw material just lying around and nobody was interested in their rights, in their possibilities, and so in that sense the line between being a Hippocratic doctor and mass murder was erased.
נציג גם את הצד המואר של הרפואה בשואה, כיצד רופאות, רופאים ואחיות, יהודים ושאינם יהודים, פעלו בגבורה בגטאות ובמחנות.
הקורס שלפניכם יעסוק בסוגיות יסוד, פיתוח זהות אנושית ומקצועית ומניעת שימוש לרעה בכוח, העצמת אמפתיה וחמלה, ולבסוף פיתוח חוסן מוסרי.
בסופו של הקורס לא תהיו יותר מי שנכנסתם אליו. אנו מעריכים שקולם של המרצים ילווה אתכם בהמשך התפתחותכם האישית והמקצועית.
Okay, thank you. So I want to highlight the importance of teaching this course, not just in medical school, but in all universities, in all faculties. So my name is Michal Ramot, and I'm the head of the online teaching unit at the Hebrew University and the course coordinator. As you have just seen, the online course Medicine During the Holocaust deals with the dark and the right side of medicine and health professions in the Holocaust, and the significance of this topic today. In October 2021, we launched the course at the Hebrew University as an asynchronous online course. In this pilot version, 105 students attended the course, and about 1/3 of them were medical students. We have further plans for this course, because in about 3 weeks, Yom HaShoah, The course will be opened on a national platform for all students in Israel. And in October 2022, we are planning to launch the English version to international students on the edX and Coursera platforms. The uniqueness of this course is that its contents are constantly moving on a timeline, linking the events of the Holocaust to the present and the future. All the course units are a combination of recorded lectures by a variety of experts, lecturers from Israel and abroad, and this is a great time to thank Dr. Tessa Chelouche, Shani, and Dr. Miriam Ofer, who helped us with this course. Assignments designed to create a simulation and implementation of the course objectives, and discussion sessions on relevant topics and tasks. To further enhance the learning experience, the lecturers incorporated images, documentaries, and feature films, with the video production being directed by Dr. Michal. The engagement of students with actual footages and images from archives, sometimes really difficult to watch, generated a multidimensional experience for the students. We opened online discussion forums and blogs to allow students to reflect on their feelings with each other. These forums also achieved collaborative community learning. In the formative task, students were required to give examples of moral dilemmas from their lives, give their opinions on events and ideas presented in this video, and deal with difficult questions such as, what would you do if? In surveys we've sent to students before and after the course, we found that the curriculum had clarified to the learners the need to express resistance in extreme cases and how to approach ethical dilemmas in life in general. I'll share with you just two of our students' reflections in their last assignment. A medical student wrote, "The stories of Jewish physicians in the Holocaust inspires me to be a role model of professionalism, humanity, resourcefulness, altruism, and heroism." And a computer science student wrote, "I realized that as a third-generation Holocaust survivor, I really didn't know enough, and I'm very happy that I took this course. I got wiser. It's the most important course I've ever taken up to now, and this is my last semester. I feel privileged." So, I would like to thank Professor Shmuel Reis for taking me on this journey. I don't think any of us could have imagined how far this course would reach, and certainly not the total devotion of our students to its contents. Thank you, Dr. Michal Beigel, the beating heart of the course, for directing, editing, and designing the videos. Thanks to the Faculty of Medicine, Professor Dina Ben Yehuda and Professor Alex Goral, for your support, especially for believing in this project and its importance. And finally, I would like to thank my amazing team from the online teaching unit, Yossi Felach, the producer, Lilach Levi, editor-in-chief, and Nimrod Shatil, the learning designer. They all have worked night and day with an endless dedication to make it all work together. Thank you.
Thanks to Michal and the support from the university. About a year and a half ago, it became a reality. We received the support, the personnel, the infrastructure, the institutional commitment to make this possible. And we are after the first pilot. In 3 weeks, we are going live really, not in a pilot, and hopefully in the first semester of the next academic year, we'll have the English MOOC available for international audience. Now, going back to what we did in the commission, when we started, the idea of informative, formative, transformative was not in our head. It came later on as we were working on the MOOC. And it wasn't explicit in our learning objectives. But when we read the reflections of the students, we realized that they had formative and transformative experience. So in the next iteration, we are going to put it explicitly in the learning objective and learning outcome, and look for ways to assess it, which is the big challenge that we spoke about it. And we are already, we have submitted 2 grants recently to use all the available tools that are out there for assessment, not just taking the reflection as the one and only evaluation, but moving to more measurable and more deep and extensive ways to find out if we really make a difference. אם זה לא הולך, זה לא ספר. אוקיי, Madi, please. Take the microphone.
I wanted to ask, I guess, Michal or Michal, any of the staff, the use of graphic images. Just this week I gave a unit where there was a video clip of the Warsaw Ghetto that people here helped produce from Channel 13, followed by the AMA unit that I had the students use. And one of the students in the feedback specifically said I had to stop watching the news clip, which was on Channel 13. I thought it was pretty generic. I didn't see anything that triggered me. I didn't watch it again. But she found the images used in the journal. She could get through that learning unit. Had you given thought to what images you do use, what you don't use, and how you go about doing that?
First of all, we mentioned in the beginning of each film, each video, that it's going to be hard to watch. It's going to be difficult. But and the students understand. They wrote that it was good that they were, that we said that and we talk about it. That it's going to be hard. And because of Michal Beigel, they saw everything. I mean, we decided that we want to show them the things the way they were. Okay, we have footages from Bergen-Belsen elaboration, and also from Auschwitz and so on. And this is actually Michal's work, so the credit is for me. And that's it. I really don't know exactly how they are going to take it to their lives. I mean, they said that it was very important, but also very hard. So I hope that one day they will realize that this is some kind of things that you have to see and feel in order to be a better person, a better professional, and so on. I hope I understand your question because
In section F, the old section F, there is a whole paragraph on the issue of difficult to or triggering learning material. And it's not just about the Holocaust, People have all kinds of buttons that when triggered, they feel it's not justified to use images or quotes or footage or whatever. The first thing I think is to avert your learners. I am going, there's no way you can talk about the Holocaust and bring video material that will be sterile. Otherwise, we will make sure not to bring the pornography of the horrors, because if you put the old BBC footage of Bergen-Belsen liberation with the bulldozers, it's probably too much. Or if you show the pictures of the dying children in Warsaw. So we have this discussion back and forth all the time. Is this too much or it's not too much? And we will continue. We will ask also our learners, we will all the time reflect on ourselves, and we will discuss it until we get to the best, which will always, of course, will not be perfect, fine-tuning of this issue.
Is Professor Dragon still here? She stepped out.
No, she just stepped out.
Because I heard a quote from Professor Dragon on this question, which taught me something as an educator, that she felt that when she presents on specific Warsaw Ghetto and the Lublin Ghetto, she feels that since the victim's consent was not obtained to the picture, that we as educators have a certain responsibility not to victimize them again by projecting their picture without the consent, which is a picture that injures their dignity as humans. And that we have, as we're educating on this ethical topic, I feel that we as educators have to take a higher ethical ground. And it's with the materials we give, my PA goes with copyright infringement, that we should be even more scrupulous.
The copyright infringement, we took care of.
Only one small thing. I think that this kind of cortisol, it's not only from the brain. I think you have to feel it from the stomach also. So when I edit or I direct our film, I think, okay, the message, the academical message, but what about the feeling? And the only way to work with feeling is with music and with footage. Okay, you have to be very careful not to exaggerate, as you say, in the British felt terrible thing. But we can go in the middle. And if one student say that he doesn't like the music, and I think the music is part of the work of feeling, that you will feel what was it, not only think what was it.
I think we were exaggerating, but it wasn't in an awareness way of. Okay. It's
שלום רב. היום אנחנו נדבר על יצירה אומנותית מאוד מאוד בעייתית, גם בהקשר המורלי, האתי וגם בהקשר הרפואי. הסיפור שלנו מתחיל ב-1907, עם האיש שאתם רואים בתמונה, פרופסור אדוארד פרינקוף, שב-1907 הוא התחיל את לימודי הרפואה שלו באוניברסיטת וינה. ב-1926 הוא נהיה פרופסור ללימודי רפואה, ב-1933 הוא נהיה המנהל של המכון האנטומי באוניברסיטת וינה. ב-1938 הוא התמנה לדיקן של הפקולטה, ואחרי זה הוא התמנה לרקטור של האוניברסיטת וינה ב-1943. אדוארד פרינקוף הצטרף למפלגה הנאצית עם הסיפוח של אוסטריה. הוא נשבע אמונים לאדולף היטלר, אבל לא רק שהוא נשבע אמונים, אלא גם התחיל את המחקר שלו על העליונות של הגזע הארי. הוא תמיד אהב להתרברב בפני בכירי המפלגה הנאצית ולעשות להם סיורים בתוך המכון האנטומי והפתולוגי שלו. אדוארד פרינקוף הלך מאוד מאוד רחוק, עד כדי כך שכרקטור האוניברסיטה הוא הורה לכל חברי הסגל להישבע אמונים למפלגה הנאצית ולאדולף היטלר. הוא ניסה גם לנקות את האוניברסיטה מהגזע שאינו הגזע הארי, או לא הגזע הנקי. ובגלל כך 77% מהפרופסורים של האוניברסיטה, כולל 3 חתני פרס נובל, מצאו את עצמם ברחוב. את הספר שלו הוא תכנן במשך הרבה זמן, אבל התחיל לעבוד איתו רק ב-1933. כמובן עם חבר הנאמנים שלו התמנו גם המאיירים של הספר שלו, שהם לא היו פחות נאמנים למשנה של אדולף היטלר ולמפלגה הנאצית. ב-1937 התפרסם הכרך הראשון, זה תמונה של הספר שאני מחזיק פה כרגע במשרד שלי. ב-1945, עם הניצחון של בנות הברית, אדוארד פרינקוף נעצר על ידי הצבא האמריקאי, והוא בילה 2 במחנה עבודה בפירוק של בניינים שהם בניינים הרוסים מהמלחמה. אדוארד פרינקוף לא שכח להמשיך את העבודה שלו ואת יצירת חייו בספר האנטומיה. ולמרבה האירוניה שבחזרתו לווינה, מי שעזר לו זה דווקא רופא יהודי בשם הנס הוף, שהוא נוירולוג ופיזיאטריסט, שנתן לו חדר ואסף אותו יחד עם המאיירים שלו להמשיך את הכרך השני של ראש צוואר, שיצא 5 שנים אחרי מותו של אדוארד פרינקוף.
We'll stop here because we are running out of time, just so that you will have the context. Dr. Madi al-Hajj who is speaking is a hand surgeon here in Hadassah. He's a Muslim Arab that trained as a student in Jerusalem and then had a fellowship in St. Louis with the team that started the debate of the use, the need to use the Pedagogy of Atlas, and that ended up with the Vienna Protocol. So he was there when this happened, and he now tells the story from his point of view of having been part of the team and the fact that he, in the OR, from time to time, will need to use the parent co-factors to save life and limb. And the combination of the historical story and the personal story is very compelling. Usually when he's on the podium and gives his talk, there is no dry eye in the audience. So this is the context. And thank you, Michal. Now, I will go to the podium, but actually, the person who is going to run our discussion in the next, let's say, 50 minutes is Sabine. I'll just be her translator here. Sabine, can you unmute yourself?
Shmuel. Shmuel has to unmute him. Needs to be unmuted. He cannot.
Okay. In this case, I see.
Wenn er mich stattfindet.
You can ask to unmute.
It worked, sorry, I don't know.
Ask to unmute.
No.
כן, זה בסדר. הנה,
Perfect.
Now, now I'm allowed to speak. I feel enabled. Thank you very much.
Okay. People have to go to the microphone, otherwise Sabine will not hear you. So, Sabine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I would first like to call on Sally, if somebody could unmute her.
I feel empowered too. Thank you. All right, so I have a couple questions following up on what we just heard. One is in the MOOC, do you call upon survivor testimonies? And second question is, do you problematize the use of the recordings from the Warsaw Ghetto, perhaps the Łódź Ghetto, because those are shot with the Nazi eye. As I think it was Madi who pointed out, the people who appear there did not give their consent. The recordings themselves are Nazi propaganda. Are those facts brought up? Do the students have the prompt to consider whether they should be watching those recordings, or it's simply put out in front of them as part of the educational experience? And if I may add a point from Astrid, with whom I've been corresponding, she points out that the clip was, quote, far beyond the German educational principle of, quote, the second quote, do not emotionally overwhelm.
Yeah.
I forgot what your first question.
Survivor testimony, is it used? So to actually get the voice of survivors as opposed to, or in addition to the Nazi eye.
The answer is yes. We do have testimonies, and for example, one of the testimonies is Shani, telling the story of a grandmother. And there is also footage of the grandmother on record. So we integrate it in the editing into her recording. That's the course is also a work in progress. Every time we launch it, we also look for how to improve it. And your second question is something that we haven't dealt with yet, and it's now will go on our to-do list for the next iterations of the course. The issue of do we show pictures or footage through the eyes of the Nazis, are we inviting the students to reflect on that? It's something that we haven't done yet, and it will be on our revision list.
Thank you, Shmuel. I would just like to underline this point about different educational philosophies.
Thank you. Yeah, and it will probably be something that we can further discuss. Christina, please.
I just wanted to add something as a student, that when in my medicine and Holocaust courses, where footage like that was shown, it was okay. I mean, for the students, only if it had like a purpose that we were going to discuss. For example, we were watching footage of the Einsatzgruppen, and then we were discussing how there were people from the village watching it, how other people from the same village were helping the Nazis. So it was okay because there was a discussion about it. But I don't think that we always need this kind of footage, because sometimes it's more revolving, or it makes you think more to see pics of a family having a wedding before the war than watching them in the camps. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. I don't always need a photo of the camps. It makes me think more to think about how they lived and how their lives were cut. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. I think the point you're making here is one of contextualization and about the opportunity to reflect together. So I think that there's a difference between a seminar where we sit together and can reflect together, or whether we have a MOOC, a video that we're watching. So I think these are all different pedagogies that need to be reflected and will be part of our work. Thank you.
Nobody's. Oh, Mark, thank you for saving the day.
I always have at least one question.
Good.
So I'll dig a little into what Sabina just mentioned, which is there are clearly differences between an online course taught to potentially, many of these are taught to tens or hundreds of thousands of people at a time, and a seminar where you can actually dig into this material and do reflective work. And I'm wondering how this is, of all the topics in all the world, this may be the one that most demands the ability to decompress and contextualize and see the nuance and the context and to talk it out with someone else after being exposed. Imagine the first time you learned about the Perenkopf Atlas, or the first time you saw an image in the museum. These are very difficult moments for many of us, and I wonder how you address that in a MOOC, where you know that there will be people who watch this one lecture and then decide to never watch another one, and others who will maybe have the opportunity to reflect and to do that deeper work.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Michal, you want to?
Yes, these are very important stuff that we are dealing all the time. I just want to remind you that this is the first one. The first course was for an Israeli audience. So we study about the Holocaust, we have families that are survivors, so this is not something that we don't understand or don't know. This is part of our culture. So I think that it wasn't a big deal, discussing those movies. We see each year in Yom HaShoah. So this was okay, but now we have to rethink about the course when we are launching in English, because this is an international audience. They don't know a lot of things about the Holocaust, and this is certainly going to be we need to be very accurate with our messages to the students, and we need to think about it more and more. It's in the process. And we also have forums, and we have blogs that they can say whatever they want. They can ask And we also met them like twice in the semester. We talked to them and they asked questions. So we do feel that they were like, we quoted them with a lot of help. But I don't know how it's going to be in the international course. We need to think about it.
I think you should also work on podcasts, because podcasts these days are very trending, and students usually prefer to hear podcasts. So maybe you can design, you can break the whole chapter in many lessons, and then they can hear it anytime while eating or while sleeping. So that would be again impactful. You can work on this idea.
The podcast is a great idea, which means Shmuel will need more money.
What happened?
Just a minute, I want to clarify that this is not a discussion about the MOOC. This is the general discussion of the day. So if anybody has a question about the MOOC, it's fine, but about general discussion, yes, Michal.
What happened when general public go to Yad Vashem or to the Washington Museum? The footage is much worse than the one that I'm using. So, and there is no moderator, there's nothing, they come families to Yad Vashem and they see very terrible things. So why not students of university?
Thanks, Michal. Perhaps, Sabine, you want to say something from your experience of the webinar, answering Matt's question?
Yes, so again, I think you have to have a contextualization, right? I love the way that I think it was Michal who said that you are rethinking that for an international audience, which ultimately we will also want to reach through our work. So there will be different situations to consider and different modes of reception also. As we've learned in the last couple of days talking about our own thoughts in the Lancet Commission, we always have to consider who are we addressing our work with, and who's going to listen. So I think that's very important. But I would like to invite you, as Shmuel just said, to also think back on the marvelous presentations we have had this morning, and whether you have answers, questions, comments on this.
Just
say your name so that Sabine will know who's speaking.
Hi Sabine, it's Madi speaking, Fox. I wanted to raise the topic of the emotional involvement in the learning. To answer, I think, self-selected learners that sign up for the course know that they're going to be experiencing an emotion. I wanted to challenge the Commission and other educators that are here with the dilemma that I faced when the course became a mandatory course. Of 13 classes, I think 6 of which I opened up with a song or a poem. And I asked specific feedback on that. And there was a minority, but they were a vocal minority, that responded with, "You're emotionally manipulating us, please don't do that." And when we asked for the reflective writing, and the feedback we gave on reflective writing was, "We'd like you to reflect deeper and share some emotions with us," we got stonewalled. Like, you're on an academic course, why are you asking me to share emotions? What does that have to do with anything? Which, for a required course, might be a legitimate criticism. How can I, as an educator, demand of them to share emotions with me? And how can I, as an educator, not be blamed for manipulating their emotions by reading a poem just like the dean did this morning and the rector did at the beginning of the week, which left an emotional impact. It colored the entire rest of the discourse after you read that poem. But anyway, so I'll leave it at that.
Anna, please.
Even with running the danger of taking the discussion a little bit too far off our topic, which is medicine and the Holocaust, I find this discussion here very fruitful about what material we use when we educate and what tone we kind of set when we educate about these topics. So I would like to add something from the German context, which is where I come from. And Sabine just said we always have to keep in mind who we are talking to, who we address, and I would like to add that in the German context there's a big debate about who's speaking. This taps into, identity politics. You might like it or not, but just to give you an example, and I find it a discussion that it's important to to not push away but to embark. I'm heading a small memorial in Germany which remembers the last school for Jewish children in Hamburg. And I'm not Jewish, and I get over the last couple of years increasing criticism from the Jewish community. I mean, it's not, it's a voice here and there, and they say, actually, we don't want our children to connect with these victims anymore. We want them to be proud German children, and they have a right to do so. We don't want to go with them in an exhibition like that. And if we do, we want to tell them the story. Again, then we have in the big Holocaust, there's a big memorial, much bigger than the one I'm working in, for the concentration camp of Neuengamme. And just recently it opened a special exhibition that actually comes from Bergen-Belsen, and it's on children in Bergen-Belsen. So as you can imagine, there's no other topic that is creates more emotion than talking about children in a concentration camp, especially Bergen-Belsen. So it's, it's a heartbreaking exhibition, and I talked to the curator. So how did you deal with the footage, and how did you choose what you chose? And for her, it was very important to point out we are a concentration camp, so the material we have consent from the survivors. We work with the survivors. And I think that's a very important aspect, to not use to not use pictures, especially children. They have lost whatever autonomy they ever had over their biography. They've lost it early on because they were killed. So it's very important when you use, and it's the same with patient pictures or victims of human experiments and so on, because they were in an extreme form victims, and they have no autonomy over their legacy, over their biography. So that's an important, and another important question is really to reflect on your role when you show these pictures, who you are. I'm from the country of the perpetrators. This is the Israeli context. It's a different context, and I find it important to take this into account when you talk about this.
Sabine, do you want to say something before there's already a person lined up?
Well, then we take the next lined up person. Thank you, though, for bringing up these very important points. We're taking them in and taking note of them for our commission work. Thank you.
Alex, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. Alex Goralen from the Hebrew University Faculty of Medicine. I have two questions, please. Actually, it's one question in two parts. We all believe that Holocaust should be taught as a part of medical education. But are we sure that it has really to be a mandatory course, but it has to be something which students can have the right to choose whether or not they want to study it? And the second question is whether or not we should use the lessons of Holocaust and everything that happened in the Holocaust as the basis for teaching medical ethics in general, or should we separate these two issues?
Sabine?
Do you want me to answer these questions?
No, just to moderate the discussion.
Do we have anybody who wants to take on these questions? I mean, I have some thoughts.
Just by the way, Alex is the person that took over for me as head of the Center for Medical Education in Enkarem, and he has very good questions. And I think the best way to deal with them is to keep them floating in the air.
May I nevertheless say something about the second question, whether the lessons from the Holocaust should be used for teaching ethics? We actually believe that this history of medicine and the Holocaust should be taught longitudinally throughout the curriculum, because we have examples from all disciplines that were involved, and you can use case studies from all disciplines. And then make a specific point about medical ethics if you're so minded. I think it depends a little bit also on the expertise you have within your curriculum in terms of faculty development.
Thank you, Sabine. Amir.
Hi. So I just want to return to Amir Teichel. Hi, Sabine. To return to our discussion that started here about visuals and emotions, and just note that this discussion has already been developed to really high levels of sophistication in the field of museology. And as Anna said, I talked to the curator, so we are in Vashem now. So the whole issue of should you use visuals or symbols, what is the way to do that, how to reflect on things, we're not inventing the wheel here, we're maybe inventing the MOOC, but the idea of taking people, showing them stuff, what will happen later, there is a rich literature about it from at least the past 4 decades, which addresses specifically Holocaust education and the experience of visitors to Holocaust museums, and I think it should be consulted.
Thanks, Sabine.
Thank you very much.
Sabine, for the sake of time, because I get all kinds of hints that we are in trouble, I'll invite Herwig, and you'll take 7, 8, 10 minutes to wrap up and summarize what we did today, and then those who were working here will get lunch.
So I get 7 minutes. I was sitting through the days. It was Shmuel Reis who put me into this spot with the mandate, summarize the lectures today, and try to add something meaningful to it. I have a little speech prepared, but I think I will leave the computer closed after all these meaningful presentations. The discussion, it would feel like an imposition if I now edit my 2 cents on various points I've noted. There are some specific messages, of course, to take away. The one thing I would like to say, and that's what I started thinking from the beginning today actually, if it hadn't been for COVID, we would have had this kind of event as a kick-off of the Commission's work actually. I think it would have avoided us it would have changed the course of our work and of our discussions. I'm not saying this is something I regret. It's also now a very good moment, maybe to let you in on a little, it's not a secret, an experience we had yesterday at the conclusion of 2 days of very intense discussions and work on the Commission. We made a little experiment. We asked every member of the Student Advisory Council and every member of the Commission to come up with 5 key points of this Commission, because we somehow agreed that we really have to focus our message. We have to be focused to get it out. Miriam Sabin, our friendly, not in-house but in-person editor from the Lancet, also drove this point home, how important this is to really focus our message. So 5 points. The hope was, of course, that we would have, that we would be somewhere close to each other after all this work. I'll make it short. We came up with about 100 points. We have not had the time to see how they plot, how they project. This is probably less a sign of disagreement, because we agree on a lot of points, but certainly a sign of work that we still have ahead, work that we have to do. And it's also the kind of mission we're taking home from Israel. From today, every presentation today was, I think, very important, food for thought. We will think it through. Also the gift Professor Mitchman dropped in our labs, which is really more of an announcement. We will be counting the days until his paper is actually out. 2 weeks, he said. So it must be really close to completion. One important reminder, and this was also the first lecture today, of course, there is already a huge body of work on medicine during National Socialism and the Holocaust, something we have to fully take on board, acknowledge, and also, of course, the development of this body of work and these discussions is in itself a topic of our Commission's work. From the beginning, this is also from Professor Mitchman reminded us, it was clear to anybody that there was some kind of very special relationship, I'll call it that, between National Socialism and medicine, But until today, it's really hard to put the finger on what exactly it is. We're really still working on this, to what extent the Holocaust was a medicalized genocide, or what the aspects of it were medicalized, with all due caution, of course, to what the aspects this really can concretely be sustained and supported with the evidence. But this is one element. From the somehow new definition of the Holocaust, what I take home, well, apart from that we really have to think through it. At first view, I don't think I fully agree with the idea that every aspect of healthcare and medicine during this time somehow relates to the Holocaust. I think this is it sounds as a bit of a totalitarian interpretation. There was something like a normal practice of medicine, and we have to distinguish, of course, the elements that were normal and those that were conducive to this implementation of this vision, utopia of a racialized, hierarchical society. On this second part, I fully agree. We've also heard as one important shift how physicians moved from treating their own patients or the individual patients to being patients of the folk. There was also this quote, very famous by Wagner, the Reich physician leader. This is very important. At the same time, we've also heard another excellent presentation about the role of public health, that there was already a fully developed segment or sector of German medicine, and also elsewhere, of course, of doctors, public health officers who were never primarily dedicated to care for individual physicians. And this is the field of public health, and this is why it is so important in our topic. This is why I hope that my section won't get cut too badly, because we're also trying to squeeze a lot of important elements in ultimately what is a very generous paper, but it's still a paper, not a collection of monographs or so. So yeah, I think I will conclude with this. The question is, are you speaking the last words? Because we are not really coordinated here. I also think it falls more to Shmuel Reis, who has made this possible here. We've been, well, I speak for myself, pampered, spoiled guests for the last 3 days, taken care in any way. I mean, we did have to do a bit of work, but other promises. Sorry? Manipulation. There was a promise that culinarily speaking it would really start high and then only get better. This was fully accomplished with the high point yesterday as guests from Etienne, Le Picard. So yeah, I can only, without any official capacity, thank you for this welcome to Israel and this beautiful event and all the organization. Again, despite the dark topic, of course, it's been and it continues to be a pleasure to work with you all. And of course, thank you to Yad Vashem for receiving us here to have this final act of this event here. Thank you very much.